All right, everybody. Hello, 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 and welcome to the presentation. Thank you so much for being here. Hey, it is Friday, Friday, Friday. Happy Friday to all you beautiful people out there. Hopefully, you're having a fantastic Friday. I'm telling you, let me tell you something. We have a little fireplace. You guys can't see that. Look at that little fireplace there. Huh? Yeah, you're probably thinking, what in the world are you doing at a fireplace when it's 150 degrees outside? But nonetheless, it's a little fireplace, a little cozy fireplace. All right. Listen, guys, Friday, here it is. It's just like that. I've stopped the clapper. It's just kind of a pain. And quite honestly, I just don't like it. So we're not going to do clapper anymore. It just doesn't, I don't know. I just didn't like it. Nonetheless, but we're here everywhere else. Everywhere else. Yeah, it was a pain. All right, everybody, happy Friday to you. Hopefully, wherever you are in this beautiful world, number one, you're staying cool, because if you're in the area where it's hot, let me tell you something, this is no joke. It is no joke. This heat wave is dangerous and life-threatening. So there are a lot of people right now who, God love them, they have no air conditioning. It really, well, I'll tell you just a second. First of all, I'm Bishop Long. And appreciate you all being here on this Friday with us. If you want to go to my website because you're bored and have nothing else better to do, you can go to bishopjameslonglong.com. Head over yonder to bishopjameslonglong.com. And you can check out the website. I want you to make sure you purchase all those wonderful books over there because when you do, that goes to the MKS Kids Foundation. It is an orphanage that we are sponsoring. And we've been sponsoring them for quite some time. I'm very, very excited to announce that one of the children, she had a tumor on the side of her face, and it was growing quite rapidly. And so our little small community, was able to raise enough money to completely take care of the surgery. I think that is profound. That is amazing. That is absolutely amazing. So thank you to all of you who have done this. There's one more donation that's coming in. Once that comes in, then MKS will be all set to go. And we will have taken care of this beautiful little angel who's struggling with it. She was in a lot of pain, and she still is. So they have now have contacted a surgeon because the surgeon has to fly in and to remove that. So she's afraid. She's scared, and that's understandable. But I want you to know, everybody, I want all of you to know this. This little girl is going to have this tumor removed because of you. So all of you know that you're doing beautiful work. And I think that's what it's all about. No matter what, no matter how hard the road might be to get to try to help people. Nonetheless, that's what we've done. So thank you guys very much for stepping in and helping out and making this happen. It is precious. Absolutely it is. So thank you guys very much. By the way, we are going to have the MKS, the Kids Foundation. They will come on after night prayer. They always join us every Friday, and we shower them with lots of love and gifts. So after night prayer, tonight's night prayer is 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and then we'll bring them on and get an update and go from there. All right? So there we go. Now, for those of you who are new here, so anyway, go to bishopjameslong.com, and you see the books there. You can purchase the books, and those funds go to the MKS Kids Foundation. Also, we have night prayer coming up at 10 p.m. Eastern. You can go to usocc.org and join us there. But you can all join us here. We'll be on TikTok and all the other social media platforms tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So hopefully you'll be with us this evening. Now, everybody, look, for those of you who are new, yep, the books help her too. So for those of you who want to know, I do have a video where I scroll on and you can see everything. The hater gators, of course. So, and I understand there was a miscommunication. That was my thing. But I show the books that I have, and you scroll down, it's 100% goes to the MKS. So I get it. Nonetheless, they're my books. and I can do whatever I want with the funds because it's my work. So our community chooses to help the MKS Kids Foundation. And that's what we do. So thank you very much. Now, for those of you who are new, this is Paranormal Friday night. Now, before you have a cow, every single Friday at 8 o'clock, we talk the paranormal, supernatural, demonology, one night a week. That's it, for an hour and a half. That's all. That's it. The rest of the time that we're on, it's always Bible study or night prayer. So, one night for 90 minutes. That's it. So, but a Paranormal Friday is a good time. Yeah, we love Paranormal Friday. And so we're going to have a very good presentation this evening. Looking forward to it. And now, here's the dilly. I have chat open for everybody right now on TikTok. Inevitably, I always have to put sub chat on because people come in with really vulgar names, and I'm not going to put up with it. So if you're going to troll on a Friday night, I mean, really seriously, go watch Netflix. But if you troll, I'm just going to put sub chat on. That'd be it. So I've always said, and I'll say it again, I would rather have chat open for everyone. I've said that so many times. Mr. Producer has been here from the beginning. He can tell you. I've said it over and over and over. I would rather have sub chat off, and so everybody can chat. Unfortunately, some people just can't behave. You hear that music, don't you? I always have hope there. I always have hope. All right, folks, let's get into our Paranormal Friday. Well, we don't do it for one person, but when 2 or 3 people, it's like, okay, we're done. Tonight's presentation is one that's it is a place that I strongly encourage you to stay away from. Has it ever physically hurt me? Yes. So I'll take your questions a little bit later because I always do a presentation. When I do a presentation, it's always structured because you're giving us your time and I'm giving you my time. So I don't believe in just looking at the camera and saying, okay, now entertain me. Actually, I have always a presentations that I do. Yep, heaven and hell are real places. The Sallie House is what we're talking about tonight, everybody. And this is one of the most, this is a place where I tell everyone stay away from. So we're going to get into it. No more questions. Hold on to your questions. I'm doing this presentation. Remember, everyone, I run this presentation on multiple platforms. TikTok is here, and the Unexplained Network and all the other social media platforms are here on this computer. So imagine this. The room is quiet. It's just after midnight. And outside, the streets of a small Midwestern town are nearly empty. Porch lights, they're glowing with it's against old Victorian homes. The wind barely stirs, the leaves. Nothing feels unusual. In fact, if you drove through the neighborhood, you'd probably think that you'd stumble into one of the safest places in America. Sometimes appearances lie. Sometimes the most terrifying places are not abandoned castles, hidden deep inside dark forest. They're ordinary homes. Houses with white siding, small front porches, children's toys in the yard, a mailbox standing faithfully beside the sidewalk. Because evil does not always announce itself. Sometimes it simply waits. Tonight we're traveling to a house that has terrified investigators, challenged skeptics, left experienced paranormal researchers questioning everything they thought they knew about hauntings. It is a place where scratches reportedly appeared on a child without warning, a place where grown adults claim something unseen attacked them. This is a place where investigators reported hearing voices, seeing apparitions, experiencing violent paranormal activity. Some believe it is haunted by the spirit of a little girl. Others believe that explanation is not only wrong, I agree, it is dangerously misleading. Because if what witnesses report is true, then whatever lived inside this house was never a child. This is the story of the Sallie House. So before we begin, I want to make something very clear. The events that we're going to discuss come from eyewitness testimony, investigations, interviews, years of reported experiences. Some claims have been documented by multiple witnesses. My team actually went there to investigate, and I'm going to tell you what happened. Thank you. Now, others remain impossible to verify independently, and as always on this program, our goal is not to tell you what to believe. It's to examine the evidence, compare the accounts, and then allow for you to self, if you believe or not. But I will tell you this. I spent decades investigating reports of the paranormal. I've walked into homes where families were terrified. I've blessed buildings where people claimed they couldn't sleep because something was standing over the beds. As a matter of fact, you probably saw me on a television show called Exorcism Live. It was on the Travel Channel. It wasn't an exorcism on a human being. I blessed the home. That's it. I didn't name this. I didn't name the show. I didn't have any authority to name the show. I was just clergy. So for those of you who don't know, the Exorcist house in Missouri, there was the wife, and she was pregnant. And this is what you didn't know about this show. And she they contacted me and say, look, she doesn't want to bring a baby into this home because of his history. Would you mind coming over and blessing the home during a live show? Absolutely. I showed up. There were 10 massive semi-trucks, and the show was called Exorcism Live. And I even told them it's kind of misleading because people are going to be thinking I'm performing an exorcism on someone. Well, I didn't have any control of what the name of the show was. I was asked to bless the home. So the videos that are circulating online and saying Bishop Long performed an exorcism on camera. No, it was a house blessing. That's it. Just a house. Whew. But I've blessed buildings where people claimed they couldn't sleep because something was standing over their beds. I've investigated places where everyone swore the activity was real. And most cases eventually have explanations. Some are environmental, some are psychological, some are misunderstandings. And then there are the rare investigations. The ones that refuse to fit neatly into any category. The Sallie House belongs to that category. For the record, I don't go around and do a live show chasing ghosts. I answer phone calls at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning when families are begging me to help them because they are terrified. And then I say, sure, I'll get to your home. It's a 10-hour drive. And then they ask inevitably how much. And then I say, nothing. Now, it doesn't cost nothing. It certainly does when you rent a car and get a hotel and all the expenses. But I don't charge. I never have and I never will. I don't work with any teams that do. Because I think it's wrong. And I have bills like everybody else, but I think that taking advantage of people, period, is wrong. And certainly when they're at a very, very low point spiritually. So we went to the Sallie House. And to understand why this house became so infamous, you have to understand where it sits. Now, I have met the previous owners, the Pickmans. I've spoken to them multiple times. The house stands in the quiet river town of Atchison, Kansas. Good old Kansas. Now, today, can you set up a donation next time? See, the problem, David, is when I do that, then I'm slammed with hate. And the hate is so overwhelming. But yet those people are never the ones that help get me to these people's homes. Never, ever. So the hate is so overwhelming, I don't do that anymore. That's why I put $15,000 on my credit card. Santa Claus doesn't pay the bill for me to get to these people's homes. And I receive no stipend or salary from the church. I fund the church with my own money. Now today, Atchison has a population of around 11,000. It overlooks the Missouri River and has the charm, thank you, you'd expect from a 19th century community. Brick streets, historic churches, beautiful Victorian architecture. They're very friendly neighborhoods. where a lot of families, they know each other for generations. It's also, by the way, known for the birthplace of Amelia Earhart. So visitors come every year to learn about the aviation history, tour the homes, etc. Nope, I don't live in Kansas. Many people call it one of America's most haunted towns, and ghost tours fill the streets every October. Residents tell stories passed down through generations, hotels, mansions, abandoned buildings. And whether you believe those stories or not, one thing is certain. This community embraces its history. And among every haunted location discussed in Atchison, none has generated more attention than a modest house located on North 2nd Street. It's not enormous. It's not really that spectacular. It doesn't resemble the massive Gothic mansions that Hollywood portrays. If you saw it without knowing its history, you'd walk right past it. It's an ordinary place. But in this ordinary home, there's something different. I mean, you can imagine eating dinner there, watching television, putting your children to bed. That's precisely what happened. Long before the television crews arrived, long before books were ever written, long before paranormal investigations filled the room, a young family simply wanted a place to live. Nothing more. In the early 1990s, Tony and Deborah Pickman, again, I met them, I spoke to them multiple times, they rented the house. And they were newly married. And like countless young couples beginning their lives together, they were excited. The home wasn't extravagant. It was affordable, comfortable. It's a place where they hoped to build a future. Neither of them expected that within weeks, they would begin questioning everything they believed about reality. So at first, the strange occurrences were so subtle, they really even, they really barely deserved attention. Little noises, small sounds, a creak here and there, a faint tapping. Anyone who's lived in an older home understands this. You know, wood expands, pipe settles, and hello, and houses breathe. It's easy to dismiss unusual sounds. That's exactly what they did. And then objects began moving. Not dramatically, not flying across rooms at first, just enough to make someone stop and wonder, did I leave that somewhere else? Again, easy to explain. Memory isn't perfect. People forget, especially during stressful periods. But according to the family's later interviews, these little incidents became increasingly difficult to ignore. So items reportedly disappeared only to reappear in impossible places. Doors allegedly opened by themselves. Lights behaved strangely. There was an overwhelming sensation that someone else occupied the home. Not physically, but somehow. It was present. And if you ever walked into an empty room and suddenly felt as though someone was watching you, you know that particular feeling. Your rational mind says that you're alone, but instinct tells you something otherwise. And most of us dismiss that sensation within seconds. The Pickmans claimed that it never really went away. And then something happened that changed everything. According to Tony Pickman, he was the husband, one afternoon he was resting in the bedroom after working long hours. Nothing unusual was happening. He wasn't frightened. He wasn't conducting an investigation. He wasn't expecting anything paranormal. He simply just lay down to rest. Without warning, he felt something. Not a breeze, not static electricity, not muscle spasms. Something touched him. And he later described the sensation as though invisible fingers were lightly running across his body. I mean, imagine lying completely alone in a locked house, eyes closed, beginning to drift towards sleep, suddenly feeling what unmistakably feels like another person's hand. You open your eyes, and no one's there. Your heartbeat accelerates. That's pretty scary. And then it happens again. This time, it grabs. It's stronger. Much stronger. Tony reportedly sat upright, looking around the room, grabbing his arm. Nothing. There was silence. No movement, no explanation. If the story had ended there, perhaps it would have been simply another strange experience. But it didn't end there. It was only the beginning. Over the following days, the encounters reportedly became even physical, more personal. almost as though whatever was inside that house had become aware that someone could sense its presence. Many hauntings described throughout history involve unexplained sounds or fleeting apparitions. Like I said, I met the Pickmans. I was friends with the Pickman for quite some time. And I'm telling you, when I spoke to Tony about this situation, his face became pale as a ghost. It affected him. I mean, what he went through was terrible. Thank you. It was terrible. And it began to interact. And that distinction is one reason this case continues to fascinate researchers, even now, because once a haunting appears capable of physically engaging with witnesses, well, the question becomes much more disturbing. If something can grab you, can it also harm you? And according to the Pickmans, that answer would soon become terrifyingly clear. And it was. So we're going to go into and for those of you who, please understand that the reason is I don't take questions is because, there we go. When I tell you that the amount of work that I put in these shows is not for braggadocious, it's because if I answer every single question, then I won't get through the 92 pages of notes. Okay? So this is why I don't take questions, because this is a lecture. So everyone just sit back, relax, and just enjoy it. Because a lot of questions are getting distracting. Just enjoy it. Just chill. Okay? Chill. All right, let's talk about how the house begins to change. So when people talk about the Sallie House, especially today, they usually jump straight to the scratches. And that's understandable. There's a lot of photographs out there that become some of the most recognizable images associated with the case. They're dramatic, they're unsettling, they're difficult to forget. And I'm going to tell you what happened to one of my investigators. Because if you listen carefully to the people who actually live there, they tell a different story. The scratches were not the beginning. They were the climax of something that had been building for weeks. And looking back, Tony and Deborah both describe what many investigators call progression. So if their accounts are accurate, which I think they are, the activity didn't explode overnight. It unfolded slowly, almost methodically. Oh, wow, Jasmine, you got your hair pulled. And that detail has always fascinated investigators. So whether you're looking at alleged hauntings, environmental explanations, psychological factors, gradual escalation is a pattern that appears in many cases. First, there's uncertainty, then curiosity, then fear. So I've had a lot of people say, oh, he's just a ghost priest or whatever, chasing ghosts. No, I'm not chasing ghosts. I'm going to people's homes where they are terrified. That's what I do. And finally, the feeling that life has become completely unmanageable. And according to the Pickmans, that's exactly what happened. So during those first weeks in the house, they began noticing little things that seemed too insignificant to mention. A door that should have been closed was now standing open. Cabinet doors were all the time reportedly left swinging after no one was opening them. Objects appeared to be moved just enough to make someone question their own memory. If you've spent 10 minutes looking for your keys only to discover exactly where you swear you already looked, well, you understand why these incidents, they were initially dismissed. I've done that. Human memory isn't perfect. We become distracted. Okay. So the Pickmans initially assumed they were simply adjusting to a new home, but eventually the frequency reported increased. And instead of wondering if they had forgotten something once a week, they found themselves asking the questions almost every day. And then another pattern emerged. Both of them began describing an overwhelming sensation that they were being watched. And now, before we go any further, it's worth mentioning something. The feeling of being watched has been studied by psychologists for years. Stress, anxiety, unfamiliar surroundings, poor sleep, heightened awareness, they can all contribute to that sensation. At the same time, it's also one of the most commonly reported experiences in locations that people believe are haunted. So what do we make of that? The honest answer is that we don't know. But it is an important part of the story because I think it helps explain the emotional atmosphere inside the home. Imagine walking through your kitchen every morning with the persistent feeling that something is standing behind you. You turn around, there's nobody. You continue making breakfast. A few moments later, that feeling returns. And again, you turn, nothing. And after a while, you stop trusting your own instincts. Perhaps even more frightening, you begin trusting them too much. And according to interviews given over the years, Tony started avoiding certain rooms. Thank you for sharing. There wasn't necessarily anything happening inside those rooms. Like, he just simply didn't like being there. And he later described feeling as though something unseen occupied part of the house. And again, that's a subjective experience. You can't photograph it, you can't measure it, you can't prove it. But anyone who's ever entered a building that made the hair on the back of their neck stand up, you know exactly the feeling I'm talking about. Then came the sounds. Not the ordinary creaks of an aging home. At least that's how the Pickmans described them. They reportedly hearing footsteps when no one else was inside. Soft footsteps. Not loud enough to suggest an intruder, just enough to sound as though someone was slowly walking from one room to another. And they would stop what they were doing. They would listen in silence. And then a few minutes later, another step. And then another. So if you lived in an old house, they make noises. Wood contracts, pipes shift, heating systems click. Older homes are full of sounds. But according to the family, these noises felt different because they seemed to occur in patterns, as though something were moving. One evening, while sitting quietly, Tony reportedly heard what sounded like movements upstairs. Not one noise, several. And he listened, it stopped. He climbed the stairs, nothing. Every room was empty. He searched the closets, nothing. Looked under the beds, nothing. The house was exactly as it should have been. Until he returned downstairs. Almost immediately, the sounds allegedly started again. This time, directly above him. Now, he later admitted that this is one of the first moments he genuinely questioned whether something unusual might be happening. He wasn't fully convinced because he's a practical guy. Perhaps there was animals in the attic or raccoons, squirrels. Anyone who's ever dealt with this wildlife in a house knows how surprisingly human those sounds can be. So he checked, nothing. No nest, no evidence of animals. Again, that doesn't prove anything paranormal, but it removed one explanation that had seemed perfectly reasonable. Then the atmosphere reportedly changed in another way. So the couple began arguing more frequently. Now, stress can do that. Sleep deprivation can do this. Living in an environment where you're constantly anxious about, can certainly do it. Investigators have often pointed out that prolonged stress affects memory, mood, and it does. At the same time, many paranormal investigators have claimed that reports of heightened tension are common in homes where people believe unusual activity is occurring. Now, whether one causes the other remains open, but according to the Pickmans, ordinary disagreements became unusually intense. I mean, small frustrations suddenly felt enormous. And they later reflected that it was as though the house itself had become emotionally exhausting. Keep in mind, this is a couple that was just recently married, so they deeply loved each other. And now all of a sudden they're arguing over the most craziest things. So eventually, friends who visited them reportedly commented on the atmosphere as well. Several of their friends later recalled that the home simply felt different. Not necessarily frightening, just uncomfortable. One visitor actually reported that they couldn't explain it, but they wanted to leave as soon as they arrived. And one visitor reported that they couldn't explain. They said it was like heavy. It felt this heaviness. That kind of testimony is interesting because it comes from someone who wasn't living with the experiences that day. Now, of course, we have to remember that memory is complicated. Many interviews occurred after the case had become famous. So people naturally reinterpret earlier experiences through the lens of later events. So that's something both believers and skeptics should keep in mind. So as the weeks passed, the reports became increasingly difficult for the Pickmans to ignore. Now, according to Tony, objects occasionally appeared to move without anyone touching them. And again, these were generally small, and unfortunately, many times they just dismiss it. Nothing like spectacular movies, you know. All right, I tried. Very distracting. Subchat is on TikTok. So for those of you who are trolling, 30 minutes I tried. So don't send me a message saying that I'm a fake priest because I have subchat on. If you do, I'm going to report you to the TikTok agency. Have your account banned for harassment. So just go away. Enough is enough. Okay. Sometimes it's the small things that are most unsettling. A television remote that wasn't there where it should be. A picture frame that had shifted. An item left carefully on a counter. It was found elsewhere. But then Tony says something. He was in the house. He wasn't conducting an investigation. He wasn't he wasn't communicating. He was sitting in the living room. And out of nowhere, he later said he felt a distinct sensation behind him, almost as though someone had entered the room and was standing just inches away. He turned around immediately. No one. Yet the feeling remained, and he would later say it was unlike ordinary fear. It felt intensely physical, as though another presence occupied the same space. And he searched the house again, every room, every closet, nothing. And yet, according to his account, he couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't alone. So that night, he reportedly had difficulty sleeping. And the following days would bring something even stranger. Something that would transform a quiet Kansas rental home into one of the most discussed locations in paranormal history. Because the activity was about to stop being merely unsettling. And according to the Pickmans, it was about to become physical. And once that happened, there was no going back. The most terrifying moment in a haunting is not always the first strange sound. Not always the door opening by itself, not even the feeling of being watched. The most terrifying moment is when the activity crosses a line. Because once something unseen touches you, scratches you, burns you, leaves a mark on your body, well, the entire situation changes. And up until that point, you can still argue with yourself, maybe it was a house settling, stress or imagination. Maybe it was the mind trying to make sense of shadows and sounds. But when you look down and see fresh marks on your skin, when someone else sees them too, when the skin is red, raised, and painful, that's when fear becomes personal. So according to Tony, that's exactly what began happening inside the Sallie house. At first, the physical sensations, they were subtle. Touching on the arm, light pressure, the feeling of fingers brushing against them when no one was there. That alone would be enough to unsettle a lot of people. But soon, according to his account, the touches became more aggressive. He began reporting scratches. These are not old scratches, not something he noticed hours later. Fresh marks. Some things appeared suddenly. Sometimes on parts of his body he could not reach, like his back. And that's when the story becomes deeply disturbing, because according to the Pickmans, the activity didn't seem random. It was focused. And Tony appeared to be the main target. So Deborah his wife, reportedly experienced strange events too. But the physical attack seemed to center on him. That detail became one of, the defining features of the Sallie house. So some later investigators suggested that whatever was in the house seemed hostile toward men. Others believe that the Sallie story, the idea of a frightened little girl, spirit, might have been the only surface layer of something much darker. There is no verified historical record proving that a little girl named Sallie died in that house during a botched surgery. That's the rumor. That story had become part of the legend, but legend and documentation are not the same thing. Because if the story of Sallie was never historically confirmed, then we have to ask a serious question. What exactly were people interacting with? That question is what makes this case disturbing. Because the innocent explanation, the little girl explanation, may not explain the level of aggression that people are reporting. Thank you. A child's spirit, which I struggle with believing, if such thing, would normally be associated with playfulness and sadness or confusion. But what the Pigments described, that wasn't playful. It was intrusive, threatening, and physical. So Tony reportedly began receiving scratches on his body with increasing frequency. Some were described as long, red marks. Others appeared in sets. And these incidents continued. The home was supposed to be safe for a young family because something else entirely invaded it. Imagine trying to live normally under those conditions, or going to work exhausted because you barely slept the night before. Imagine coming home and wondering whether the house would be quiet or whether something else would happen. Or imagine trying to explain to friends that you believe something invisible is attacking you. This is why I do this ministry. I do this ministry because a lot of people think they're losing their minds, and that a lot of clergy won't help. Or if some clergy will help, they'll charge them $5,000 or $10,000. This is why I'm passionate about this ministry, because I let people know they're not alone. You know, some people are going to believe them, and some people will pity them, and some will quietly think, well, they're losing their mind. The fear is that no one will believe you. That's what they always tell me over and over. And according to the Pigments, the activity eventually became so intense, they began documenting what they could. There were photographs that were taken of marks. Experiences were discussed. Visitors were told what would happen. And as soon as the story began moving beyond the walls of the house, that was it. People started talking. But before television crews and paranormal investigators entered the picture, there was still the daily reality of living there. And that reality was terrifying, because the house did not feel like a place with an isolated ghost. It felt layered, as though more than one presence occupied it. Now, some reports involved the sense of a child. Others involved something darker, colder, intelligent, manipulative. I think that distinction is important, because in many alleged hauntings, witnesses describe what they feel like residual activity. It's a sound repeating itself, or a figure seen in the same place, a door opening the same time, almost like an old recording that's embedded in the environment. But the Sallie House reports something very different, because they suggest awareness, response, timing, almost as though whatever was present knew it was being discussed. Knew that people were afraid. They knew how to push them. And that is when a haunting begins to feel like an echo, more like intelligence. And intelligence is far more frightening than activity, because an echo cannot hate you. A recording cannot stalk you. A memory cannot wait for you in the dark. But something intelligent, that's different. According to Tony, the attacks sometimes seemed to happen when the tension was very high. Arguments, stress, fear, and the house seemed to feed on emotional disturbance. Again, that could be interpreted many ways. A skeptic may say, well, stress increases perception. A paranormal investigator might say negative energy strengthens that kind of activity. Both explanations have been offered in the cases like this, but whatever the cause, the result was the same. The Pigments felt trapped inside a home that no longer felt like theirs. And then came reports of fire, small fires, unexplained burn marks. That's important. Incidents that suggested a danger might not be limited to scratches and fear. Now, anytime fire enters a paranormal case, the seriousness changes immediately. I think this family was dealing also with a poltergeist. A poltergeist means noisy ghost. It's not a ghost at all. It's energy, negative energy. Um, when a family is fighting and they're arguing, that energy is omitted. That negative energy can cause electrical appliances to malfunction. It can also cause fire. The number one form of destruction with poltergeist is fire. So small fire started. Now, can a demonic attach itself to this negative energy? Sure. It can amplify it. And I think that's really what happened here. So the Pickmans started reporting incidents involving objects burning, even appearing scorched. And now this added a new layer of dread, because now the question wasn't simply, what is this? The question became, can we safely stay here? And that's the moment many families reach in alleged haunting cases. They stop asking whether the activities are real. Because now they're starting to ask, okay, can we even survive this? And then for Tony and Deborah, the question became even more urgent because they were not alone. They had a baby. That changes everything. Fear is one thing when it only concerns you. But when a child is in the home, fear becomes unbearable. Every noise becomes a threat. Every cold spot becomes suspicious. Every open door becomes something you check twice. You don't sleep deeply. You listen, you wait, you pray that the night stays quiet. Sometimes, according to the Pickmans, it did. Sometimes it did not. As the activity continued, the story of Sallie began to take shape. The idea was that the house was haunted by the spirit of a young girl. So, like I said, I alluded to earlier, some accounts claim she had passed away as a tragic medical emergency. The story went that a doctor performed surgery too soon, before anesthesia had fully taken effect, and the child died in terror, believing the doctor was hurting her. It's a horrifying story. Child in pain, desperate mother, a doctor trying to save a life, surgery that becomes a nightmare. If the story was historically proven, it would be tragic enough. But again, the problem is evidence. The legend is powerful. There is no proof at all that this occurred. It is a legend. So the lack of documentation has caused many researchers to really question whether Sallie was ever a real child even connected to the house. That doesn't necessarily mean that the Pickmans invented their experiences. It means that the interpretation has been wrong. So people often experience something first and then search for a story to explain it. Noise becomes a ghost becomes a child becomes Sallie. And then once a name attaches itself to a location, it becomes very difficult to separate reports from the legend. But we'll get to it. But what if the name was wrong? What if the image of a little girl made people lower their guard? What if something darker was using innocence as a mask? Now that possibility has haunted this case for decades, because if witnesses believed they were speaking to a child, they may have approached the presence with sympathy. They may have invited communication. They may have opened themselves up emotionally. And if the presence was not a child, which it was not, then that sympathy may have been exactly what it wanted. See, there are cases in paranormal history where investigators have warned that not every presence presents itself honestly. In Christian demonology, deception, that's not incidental. It is central. The danger is not simply that something may frighten you. The danger is that something may lie to you. It would appear wounded or innocent, harmless. And then, once trust is established, the activity changes. And that is one of the reasons why many clergy experienced investigators caution against reckless communication, especially with unknown entities. See, the first question should never be, what is your name? First question should be, what is the nature of your presence? The answer is not always comforting. I asked, do you confess that Jesus is your Messiah? The response, very clear, Class A EVP, hell no. So inside the Sallie house, the reports seemed to move between two extremes. On one hand, there were claims of childlike activity. Toys moving, small presence, suggestion of a child. On the other hand, there were scratches, hostility, fire, oppressive energy, reports of darker manifestations. And those two categories do not sit comfortably together. That's exactly why the house became so infamous. It did not offer a simple haunting story. It offered a contradiction, a child, predator, a ghost, something demonic, tragic legend, violent presence. And somewhere in the middle of all that were Tony and Deborah Pickman, trying to live in a house that seemed to be unraveling around them. Now, people say to me often about fear, and that's a fair question. They say, don't fear because you feed into this. And that's fair. I get it. But here's the problem with saying that and living it. Because when you're in that home, your home, and you're by yourself, and you know no one else is in that home. And let's say you're in your bedroom and the door is closed. And now the door opens. That's a different story. Or let's say you're in your bedroom, lights are out, you're by yourself. You're slowly drifting off, ready to go to sleep, and then suddenly you feel something very clear kick your bed. Something was there. Or you feel your bed shake. And then you dismiss it. It must have been a little tremor, a little earthquake. Okay. But then you look in the corner and now you see a black mass looking right at you. You see, friends, it is easy to say you wouldn't be scared, but I tell you, I have had police officers, I have had military personnel, I have had some of the one of the biggest guys I've ever seen in my life. As soon as I went to their house, he was running outside the home, begging me to get in there and fix this. And I mean, it was overwhelming. Because what you're living through, when you're living through something unbelievable, there comes a point when you need someone else to stand beside you and say, I saw it too. That's exactly what would happen. So the next Sallie House was about to become more than a family's nightmare. It was become a case. So let's talk about this. Before the Sallie House became famous, paranormal teams turned it into a destination. Before cameras were pointed into the dark corners and investigators and sat in silence waiting for a voice to answer, there was one question everyone wanted answered. Who was in the house? That's always the question. When people hear footsteps in an empty hallway, they want a name. When a door opens, they want a story. When a shadow passes through them, they want the history. Because a name makes fear easier to hold. It turns the unknown into a person. And if the unknown is a person, then maybe it can be understood. Maybe it can be reasoned with. Maybe it can be helped. That is a part of what makes Sallie House so unsettling. The name Sallie gave the haunting a face, a little girl, tragic story, allegedly. At first, the explanation seems comforting, pleasant. No, not peaceful, understandable. Child ghost is frightened. You can feel sympathy for the child, pray for the child, speak gently. But what if it was bait? Because I think it was. So researchers have struggled to find, again, a name that Sallie ever lived there in those circumstances. And that's even more frightening. Because I don't believe that it was a presence of a child. In my eyes, it was not. So teams have gone there and investigated this location. But similar reports arise again and again from different people over time. The case becomes harder to ignore. So still the name Sallie remained at the center. Who was she? Is she real? Was she a legend? Maybe the name Sallie tells us less about what haunted the house and more about how desperately people need fear to have a face. A child named Sallie is tragic. A child named Sallie can be imagined. A child named Sallie can be spoken to. But the scratches, the watches, the weights, that's harder to explain. So a word to the strange events inside the house began to spread beyond the Pickman circle of family and friends. It was only a matter of time before people with an interest in the paranormal wanted to see the property for themselves. And that's often the turning point in cases like this. What begins as a family's private struggle slowly transforms into something much larger, attracting investigators, skeptics, journalists, even television producers, all hoping to find the story. So the Sallie House followed the familiar path. But what made it unusual was the reports from many visitors seemed to echo one another in surprising ways, even when those visitors came from very different backgrounds, held different beliefs. Some investigators entered the home convinced they would find evidence of a haunting. Others walked through the front door expecting to debunk the entire story and believed that the Pickmans had just simply misunderstood ordinary events in the house. The difference in perspective is important because a good investigation should always begin with the possibility that there's a normal explanation. Every strange noise needs to be checked. Every unexplained shadow examined. Electrical problems, vibration, everything needs to be investigated. The investigators who approached the Sallie House with that mindset believed they were being responsible, and many of them were. And one of the things that appears repeatedly throughout interviews with visitors is not necessarily the claim that they witnessed dramatic paranormal phenomena every time they entered the house, but rather that they experienced a gradual, growing sense of uneasiness that seemed to increase the longer they remained inside. Several described the atmosphere as unusually heavy, almost as though the house carried an emotional weight that was difficult to put into words, and others reported feeling anxious for no obvious reasons. A few said they developed headaches, got sick to their stomach after spending time in certain rooms. And these kinds of experiences, they're highly subjective. They cannot be by themselves established the location is haunted. They could have high EMF. The nursery became one of those rooms that attracted the greatest amount of attention, largely because it was associated with the legend of Sallie. So investigators, they placed cameras, recorders, and equipment inside, hoping to capture something that might explain. Some later claimed that they heard unexplained sounds or recorded noises. The problem is there's so much, it was so across the board. It was there was benign activity, others it was very violent. And you're going to argue environmental factors, etc., but the fact of the matter is many people experience something. One of the most disturbing claims connected to the Sallie House is not simply that people experience strange events, but that some witnesses felt the house seemed to respond to them. See, that idea changes the entire character of the case because there is a significant difference between a location that appears to contain unexplained activity and a location that seems to react intelligently to the people inside it. And during investigations, a visitor often tried to communicate with whatever they believed might be present in that house. Some people asked simple questions, which we did. Others attempted more direct challenges, provocation. Let me make this very clear. When you go to a location that has alleged demonic activity, and the moment you say, come on, I dare you to do something, I dare you to do something, you are not provoking. I want everyone to understand this. You're provoking nothing. What you are doing is inviting. There is a big difference between the two. Provocation is when you begin to pray, and you're going to force the entity to manifest. That's what I did when I was at the Exorcist house, where there are videos of me performing the minor rite of exorcism, a house blessing. You provoke the entity to manifest through the prayers. So that's what, when you start praying the Litany of the Saints, the Our Father, the Hail Mary, when you start praying certain prayers, you're going to get a reaction. That is different than I dare you to do something. Now you've invited. So in a place like Sallie House, where the identity of the alleged presence has never been really firmly established, that kind of confidence may be misplaced. Because if the activity was merely psychological, environmental, then provocation would accomplish nothing. But I want to tell you what happened to one of the investigators that we had. So one of the investigators that we had was push the boundaries a little bit too much, and he began inviting. So he went to another room while we were doing EVP work and things of this nature, and we heard the most blood curdling sound, scream, and went right into this room where he was. Now, this person had no cigarettes, he had no lighter, he had nothing on him. We checked. He had a cross, and he unbuttoned his shirt. And his crucifix, the necklace, had embedded into, it's a 3rd-degree burn. To this day, he still has that burn. It embedded into his chest. When he pulled it, we could see the skin being pulled. And that was a time where there was a picture taken. And I'm going to show you a picture that's going to blow your mind. This picture is probably one of the most, I think, amazing pictures when it comes to the Sallie House. And I'm going to be able to share it with you guys here on this computer, and then I'll have to Sallie 1. I'll show you guys on my screenshot of it. Sallie 2. That way when I name it. Okay, good. I'll show you guys in a moment. You're not going to want to miss this one. Okay. So I want to talk briefly. Let's continue, and I'll tell you more of that story in just a second. But there is something uniquely unsettling about walking into a house after midnight, when every light has been turned off and every sound seems louder than it should. Investigators who visited the Sallie House often said the building felt completely ordinary during the day. It does. It's the same thing for the Gates of Hell Cemetery. Feels completely normal in the day. And many say that when darkness falls, things change. And whether that came from the house itself, from the neutral effect of the darkness, people can debate. But several investigators described as an overwhelming silence that almost seems unnatural at night. It was not the peaceful silence of a quiet neighborhood. It was the kind that makes every heartbeat seem a little louder, every breath feel out of place. So, contract with God or his angels? Why did that God? Well, in this case, this was demonic. So many people later recall that they found themselves whispering without even realizing, as though speaking too loudly might disturb something they couldn't see. One investigator described standing alone in the upstairs room, and that is where this one investigator of our team, that's where it happened, while the rest of the team worked downstairs. And he later said that he suddenly had the unmistakable feeling someone had stepped into the doorway behind him. He turned around, expecting to see another member of the group, and no one. Empty. He admitted afterward that the experience frightened him far more than any photograph or ghost story had ever heard, because for one brief moment, he had been absolutely convinced that another person was standing right behind him. See, experiences like that are difficult to evaluate because the sensation of being watched, it can occur naturally. Even so, the number of people who independently describe similar feelings inside the house has kept the conversation alive for decades. It's one of those details that doesn't prove or disprove, but it certainly is something that's there. Some investigators claim that they hear footsteps moving slowly across the second floor, while every member of the team was accounted for elsewhere. The sounds were reportedly measured, deliberate, heavy enough that several people believe someone had quietly entered the building. And after searching every room, however, they found no one. Now, Let me see if I can find this. I can't promise you that I can, but if I can, I'll play this. This was an EVP that we caught. We were walking upstairs. There it is. I want to play this for you. So you have to listen to it. It says, "Help me." That's what it sounds like. So we're upstairs, and this is, here it is. Did you hear that? One more time. Did you hear that? Pretty cool, isn't it? see, I'm like, yeah, that's cool, that's good stuff. A lot of people are like, no, that's not cool. That's not cool at all. We shouldn't be. Of course, there was no one down there saying, "Help me," but you hear it. I clearly hear it. "Help me." And we were walking upstairs. We don't know. Well, I think that was demonic. So the nursery remained, the room that drew the greatest attention. Again, because it's connected to the surrounding of Sallie and alleged Sallie. Now, every famous haunting eventually reaches the same uncomfortable question. What's really happening there? So the Sallie House is no different, because once you move past the scratches, the footsteps, the uneasy feelings, one of our investigators actually having the crucifix embedded to this day. You can see it's right there. It left a permanent scar. A lot of people, let's throw the theories out there. Is one of the most people know the house is haunted by a spirit named Sallie? I don't think so. I disagree with that. Again, there's no historical evidence for Sallie at all. And quite honestly, I'm a big. I have a problem with children ghost. I'm not a fan of it. And I'll tell you this: in every case that I've had where there was alleged children ghost involved, in every case it was demonic. Every single one of them. I've been doing this for a long time. I've been in the paranormal field for 35 years. And I'm telling you, yes, I'm in my 50s, I'm old. And I'm telling you, I absolutely am convinced. Absolutely convinced that this was demonic. Well, I'll show you. So our team, after one of the investigators was scratched as he was, and with the 3rd-degree burn of the crucifix embedded into his chest, that alone tells me there's something not good there. That's not good. Our team took a picture. And let me show you this picture. First, let me show you a picture of the Sallie House so you can get an idea of what I'm talking about, okay? So 1 second. All right. Matter of fact, we showed this picture to the Pickmans, and they were like, okay, that's it. I mean, it was, all right. So this is, let me grab this. Hold on. Oh, come on. Don't you hate it when, okay. Let me find it. I'm just trying to grab a picture, for heaven's sakes. Come on. We gotta wait for like 5 hours. Okay, you know what? There, you little heifer. Okay. Man. All right, let me just blow this up here. That way you guys can see it. Just easier to do it this way. Try to save it. All right. So this is the Sallie House. Okay. I want you to pay attention to that right upstairs. All right. Ordinary little house. Nothing big at all. I know, because guys, I remember I have two computers. I have to show them too. So I have this because I have two computers running the presentation. And now you guys. All right. Now it's a small little, small little house, but it's ordinary. It's all good. Now, so we were upstairs on the second floor there, right? And you see there's like a little kind of a roof there, sort of. Now, to be fair, no one was on the roof, on this little roof here. No one was there upstairs. So we decided to, now let me show you this. Where one of our investigators received that burn, one of the investigators took a picture outside looking towards the street. Okay, so you understand, that's why I wanted to show you this. So let me bring this up, and I got to show everybody on this computer first. And let me grab this, and then I can do it. So everybody, you got to remember, I'm doing multiple things and multiple computers at the moment. So it's going to take a few seconds. Everybody just got to be patient. Okay. I think we can do this. All right. Desktop. So remember this picture here. Now what you see is you have an investigator here and an investigator here. That was Bishop David. And then you have this right here. So for those of you listening on this other computer, again, there's three arrows. You see that? The top one, that was looking in the house. And then the middle arrow is one of the investigator, and the other arrow right here was one of the investigators, Bishop David. Now, when you see that, you thought, well, that's kind of creepy. Now that, my friends, is called a negative, boys and girls. So a negative for the newer generation is when you take pictures, you have a negative of that particular picture. So we decided to have someone make it into color, fix it up a bit, and try to find out, kind of what is this thing. So someone does that professionally, and this is what that's what it is. Keep in mind, this was just after one of the investigators having the crucifix embedded into his chest. There it is. Right there. So I don't believe that this was a child, obviously for obvious reasons. And the EVPs that was captured, the experiences, other people were scratched. This was really, really violent. Now, so I think that the theory that's more appropriate for this place, many clergy and demonologists agree, is the possibility that the child entity was never really a child. It was a mask used by something deceptive. Here's what happens. So I've had a case before where people started using a Ouija board, and they how are you? And they give a name, and how old are you? 8 or 7. And are you afraid? Yes. Do you want us to help you? Yes. And so then before you know it, they're communicating with this thing all the time. The problem is you don't know what you're talking to. Do you really think you're speaking to an 8-year-old child that's afraid? Do you really think that God's going to allow a child who's passed on wander around in terror? No. This is why I'm very skeptical when it comes to people who think that they're dealing with a child when they have activity. Now, there is a lot of people, there are some people who believe everything is demonic. I disagree. I fundamentally disagree. Primarily because I've investigated for 35 years. I have been to many locations. And I've been to locations where it wasn't violent at all. At all. And there would have been. There would have been some type of, you would have, first of all, you would have felt it if it was demonic. So not everything is demonic. It just simply isn't. And I say that just from my own personal experience. I have not found that to be true. If it was, I would say it. But from my own personal experience, there was one house that I've talked about this a lot. It was in the middle of summer. The air conditioner was out. It was, oh God, it was horrible. It was 90-something degrees. It was horrible in that house. And but activity would happen. They would hear things, but it wasn't violent. It wasn't aggressive. And so we began to pray for whatever that was there, because it wasn't a violent thing. And then we had a temperature gauge, and it was a 30-degree drop. 30 degrees. And we felt this like a wind. All of us, we were in the circle praying the Our Father. We felt this wind at our feet, like the air conditioner kicked on. And it just went around and went to the knees and just disappeared. And it was absolutely beautiful. So no, from that experience and a lot more, I have not found that everything is demonic. It just isn't. Not save them. Well, and that's the problem when you're talking about ghost. We look, heaven. I don't think it's forced upon you. I think heaven is presented to you. People can argue perhaps maybe ghosts remain because they have unfinished business. It could also because perhaps they could visit us. Because heaven exists outside of time and space, and that's hard for us to try to grasp. How can you exist outside of time and space? Because that's the only existence that we've known. In other words, we can't be in two places at once. Here we are. This is where we are. But in heaven, it's different. There is no time or space. It doesn't exist. Because where God is, time and space cannot exist. Because time and space are restricted. God cannot be restricted. Purgatory, I've heard that theory, perhaps maybe purgatory. One of the most brilliant movies, one of the most brilliant movies is The Others. Because it really does tackle that, why are ghosts here? What are ghosts? If you have not seen that, I encourage you to watch it. It's one of my all-time absolute favorite movies. I wish they would make another one. It was such a great movie. Brilliant. The way that twist at the end. If you have not seen it, guys, make sure, definitely take a look at it. Well, thank you there, Dr. Campbell. Yeah, but check that out. It really is a fantastic. I will tell you this. The Pickmans, experience something incredibly intense, overwhelming. And I am absolutely, without question, convinced that they experienced something that was so invasive that they really don't talk into great detail. I mean, they've talked about some things, but there are some things they just don't want to revisit. And I don't blame them, because what they experienced was absolutely terrifying. And this is one of the reasons why I do this ministry. Because when number one, if people are experiencing paranormal activity, a lot of times they think they're going crazy. And then when they're like, okay, I know something is happening, then they start wondering and worrying, Well, I can't really talk to my pastor because my pastor's going to think that I'm crazy. And so that's a form of isolation. Or you can't talk to your friends because your friends are going to think you're crazy. Or sometimes they do talk to the pastor and the pastor says, well, you must have done something to give an invitation. And they put the blame on these people. I cannot tell you how many times people have gone to their pastor and the pastor says, well, you haven't been at mass or you haven't been to services in the last couple of weeks. Well, I mean, you got to start coming to church. Well, what does that have to do with you helping them? Collection plate. But it just, it's kind of, I've had so many pastors blatantly tell people that they're lying or that that their faith is not good enough. Oh, I cannot tell you how many times they've said this to people. If you had stronger faith, it wouldn't affect you. Wow. And so this is one of the reasons why I stay focused on this ministry. Because the Sallie House is a place that I strongly encourage anyone, stay away from. This is not a place that you should go to. I understand paranormal investigators may have the desire to investigate this home, but there have been so many people who have been scratched, one person that was been bit. One of our investigators had that crucifix embedded into his chest. So this is certainly not a place. This is definitely not a place where people should hang out. So I hope not. And if you do, then you might have to end up giving me a call. And no, it's not permanently occupied. So in 1993, I believe it was 1993, if my memory serves me correct, it was vacated. And of course, so it's a tourist attraction now. So you can go there, you can investigate, and Tony and Deborah Pickman, they lived there from 1992 to 1993. So you can stay there, you can go there, guys, but you do have to you have to sign a liability waiver before you're allowed to go in. So, yeah. Well, I think so. If you want to go, there's a group minimum, from my understanding. There is a very strict 2-person minimum that you have to have, and to even get a booking. And I think there's 10. They allow 10 people to go there overnight. So, but yeah, sure. I mean, you can go. You can click on the site, and who wants to go? Who wants to go there? They have tours. They have overnight stays. I'm looking. Here, you can go to the website. Visit Atchison.com. So you can visit Atchison.com, and you can book it overnight. Premium experience, $125 per person. So it doesn't really say how many number of guests. I guess 2. So they have a couple. July opens availabilities. So head on over there, folks. Go on the 21st. Check that out. Yeah, it's a hard pass. I understand that. All right, let's go into some of our paranormal. Let's find it. Our paranormal story. How's that? Are you ready? Okay, let's do a few paranormal stories of the week. All right. Yeah, there are other people who are experiencing activity. Listen to the first story, everybody. This is very interesting. The Pentagon's new UFO files reveal a scaly potato object. Imagine hiking through the mountains when something catches your eye. Floating silently above the ridge is an object unlike anything you've ever seen. It doesn't have wings, it doesn't make a sound, and it looks like a giant potato covered in fish scales. That sounds like something from a science fiction movie, but according to newly released Pentagon files, that's exactly what several witnesses report seeing. The objects reportedly hovered motionless for nearly 2 minutes before vanishing, almost instantly. Investigators examined possible explanations, including unusual reflections from sunlight, clouds, but admitted they could not reach a definitive conclusion. Another newly released case describes glowing red-orange orbs that appeared to split into smaller objects before disappearing, with investigators concluding that the sightings remain unresolved. So here's the question. If these witnesses were not looking at an aircraft, a drone, or atmospheric illusion, then what exactly were they watching? Because sometimes the most unexplained, unsettling mysteries are the ones even the government can't explain. Could you imagine looking up and seeing a great big potato? Like, what? And that was in the Pentagon files. It's like, well, yes, let's hide that from the public. And why? I mean, that's top secret? Okay. Hey, you know what? This is a very interesting one. A new, in ghost, I hate the term ghost hunt. A new paranormal investigation ends with an unexplained voice. So every paranormal investigator hopes that they'll capture something they can't explain. But what if that something starts talking back? I've had that experience. A team investigating a centuries-old building this week says that they recorded what appears to be a voice answering one of their questions. The investigators insisted that no one else was inside the room, and the audio doesn't match any of the people present. Even strangers, several cameras reportedly experienced unexplained battery failures at the exact same time. And the recordings are now being analyzed to determine whether there's a normal explanation or whether the sounds truly defy explanation. Reports like these continue to surface regularly from paranormal investigators, though they remain unverified, often debated by skeptics and believers alike. Here's the deal. I've been into many locations where I have captured EVPs, which is electronic voice phenomena, which I played when it says help me. I have captured a lot, and I mean a lot. For example, I know for a fact that I was technically alone at the gates of Hell Cemetery. Well, I say technically because I really wasn't alone. There was something evil there that was present. And I'm going to prove to you what it sounds like, an EVP. Now, I did not hear this. So I didn't hear this EVP because it's an EVP. But when I played it back, I heard it and I thought, wow, okay, this is intense. So I said, is there anyone here? Are you friendly? I just felt like something was wrong. I was right. This is at the Gates of Hell Cemetery.
Is there anyone here? Are you friendly?
I think everybody heard that. Now, a disembodied voice is when you can actually hear it. So you're like, is there anybody here? No, there was no, and there was no animal around because I would have heard it. I would have heard it. I heard nothing, but I knew something was there. You could feel it. I mean, there's no question about that. You can't, there's no guessing. I'll play it one more time. There's no guessing involved.
Is there anyone here? Are you friendly?
That is the place where we saw that creature, whatever the heck that thing was. Maybe I'll talk about that one day again. Now, I've also had an EVP, and this was at Eastern Cemetery. Eastern Cemetery was terrible. The caretaker of Eastern Cemetery, the previous caretaker rather, he buried people on top of one another. This was in Louisville. He was arrested. Sent to prison for this. And sometimes he would dig graves up and bury people, different people there. I mean, it was just, what he did was terrible. So I was at the Eastern Cemetery. It was at nights, and I was walking past, actually, that was during the day. I was walking past where they had urns where people are cremated, And I wanted to see if it would say James. And I said, do you know who I am? Because I just felt like, I didn't feel like something evil, but I felt like something was around me. And I wanted to hear it. Thank you. And I wanted to hear if it said James. It says Seth. Let me play it for you. It's fascinating. This would be, I think, a Class A EVP. You clearly hear it. I do.
Do you know who I am?
Do you hear it? It says, I'll play it again.
Do you know who I am?
Don't know. Have no idea. Okay, Mr. Producer. I have no idea. It says Seth. And I don't know who Seth is. But there are so many EVPs that we've captured. It's just absolutely phenomenal. Crazy. So for those of you listening to this on podcast, we say good night to you. I want to remind everybody, don't forget that at the top of the hour, we're really at 9:50, we have our night prayer. And I do hope that you join us for that. Let me go ahead and upload this, Paranormal Friday. And I'm going to do this for you. 1 second. Sallie House. That way you can have this on and you can listen to it. Go to bishopjameslong.com. Click on the podcast link. All the podcast links are free. And you can listen to that. So everybody, make sure, don't forget, stop by in about 20 minutes or so, a little bit more. We're going to have our night prayer. Hopefully you'll join us. I have to break everything down and get things ready for night prayer. So remember, friends, your value does not decrease. Based on someone's inability or refusal to see your worth, you're priceless. Don't let anybody tell you or convince you otherwise. And have a wonderful, safe 4th of July. God bless.